I just need to quickly say that under anger is hurt. A lot of times in the media, whenever we're talking about transgender topics, we see a lot of anger and we see a lot of argumentative natures. I want to say that in this podcast, I am sharing a very vulnerable side of myself. My heart is very heavy. I experience a lot of sorrow and sadness in regard to the state of how current things are being administered and run. And I just need to preface by saying that that is the avenue that I naturally gravitate toward in regard to this topic. Instead of anger, I do genuinely feel sadness and sorrow. Additionally, I do want to say that my microphone was not plugged in, unbeknownst to me. So my audio quality is lower this week. However, I will not be re-recording because I do think that this is my authentic response to the situation. And I think it would be a disservice to all of us if I were to try to replicate it or redo it in any capacity, because I think that it would lose its genuine nature in how it is that I did experience sharing this with you in my most heartfelt condition. And so I just, I want to apologize about that, but I hope that you are able to glean whatever information it is that sticks with you, and that the Lord is able to utilize this for his glory and that it may help his kingdom come. God bless, and I look forward to hearing all your thoughts in the comments. Hi, Allie Marie here. Welcome to My Catholic Perspective. I want to preface today to say that I do not intend to come across as an authority on this topic. I am simply sharing my Catholic perspective on this. And I am just a regular human being who has a really deep heart for other people. I genuinely care about humanity. I believe that every human being is worthy of dignity, which ultimately is meaning that you are worthy of honor and respect. I want to hear other people's point of views. I think that every single person is worthy of being heard, right? I think that that's really, really important. And so this morning outside of Mass, I spent quite a bit of time reading the latest Vatican document, Dignitas Infinita, and looking at the cast review, which my most recent podcast was Transgenderism Explained from My Catholic Perspective, where we talked about some different aspects about my experience with body dysmorphia and like eating disorder type things, talking about the 50-year-old in Canada who is born a male identifying as a female and is allowed to compete with teenage girls, and recently had utilized their locker room, which was very upsetting to me. And somebody had commented saying, oh, I see that you saved to release this for the same week that the cast review was released. And tell you what, that article is so biased and unreliable. They denied 50 studies that promoted the positivity of gender reaffirming care and all of these things, where my initial response to that was, well, what if those 50 studies were unreliable? What if they were baseless and a low quality study, right? The cast review contains peer-reviewed articles and is truly just rooted in evidence. Whether you like that evidence or not, doesn't negate the fact that it is evidence and it is peer-reviewed and it is based in reality, right? Which is what we have to look at. A lot of what Dr. Cass has seen is that a lot of the gender affirming care that has been given out has been much more rooted in ideology than in evidence, which is the same thing for pro-life arguments, right? Like a fetus in the womb is a human. It is a life. Evidence shows that. Biological fact shows that. And there's this denial of evidence in that situation that so many want to cling to. Some are starting to admit, I think it was Bill Mayer recently said, no, I understand it's a human and I think that it does kill a life, but I'm just okay with that. How does that work exactly? Other than he said that it prevents them from suffering, which is a whole different, that's his argument. And it would be the argument of the Catholic Church as well. In Dignitas Infinita, Victor Manuel Cardinal Fernandez ends the preface here with, this is the whole reason that we're talking about this is so that we may not lose our way and open ourselves up to more wounds and profound sufferings amid the numerous concerns and anxieties of our time. Just the other day, I decided to get off of TikTok. I deleted my the app. I have spent the better part of 3 years being bullied and cyberstalked and harassed on there because of my very deeply rooted beliefs in what I believe to be common sense and just basic know-how about the male and female bodies and how we exist and how we are born. So my view on that, there's this jump to accuse bigotry, this jump to accuse transphobic, this jump to accuse homophobia, when it's like, no, I respect all of these people. I'm more than happy to talk. I'm going to disagree about whether or not this is the best way or the best route to pursue, or whether or not it's drawing you into holiness, whether it's something that God, ultimately says he approves of. But let's talk about it. Let's hear your story. Let's see what your experiences have been. How were you, abused as a child? What has occurred in your life that has brought you to today? Like, let's talk about, I want to know your heart, right? And so I decided that I was going to just get off TikTok because my husband has wanted me to for a very long time, because he saw how detrimental it was to my spirit. And so at this point, I read the cast study, the cast review, and I see, oh my gosh, yeah, absolutely. There's this inability to even dialogue about this because everyone just jumps to these polarized things that you're hateful, you're bigoted, and it's almost, they're projecting their own things. There's this, it's reverse bigotry, right? Which they're going to say isn't possible, but it's what's going on. They say that I hide behind my religion, when my religion says that what our goal is to protect ourselves from further suffering, which is what love does, right? I was thinking about if I was 16 years old and say I wanted to go on a cross-country road trip with somebody else who just turned 16. They want to go to Florida for spring break. And my mom would say, no, you can't ride across the country in that car with a 16-year-old because they are a new driver. It's unsafe. She would, out of love, she would be trying to protect me from more profound sufferings. If we were to get in a car accident, if whatever might happen from this inexperienced driver, she, out of love, to prevent suffering, is going to do her best to keep me safe. That is her duty as a parent. And so when you look at Catholic doctrine, when you look at the theology, it's ultimately to protect us from profound suffering. It's ultimately to keep us in a state of peace, in a state of grace, so that we can pursue what it is that God has always intended for us. And that's what I talk about all the time on this channel. And so in the Catholic document, in Dignitas Infinita, he talks about all of the different surrogacy, marginalized gender theory, sex change, these different pieces that are obvious hot topics, and people are upset about it because they say, well, Pope Francis has been so welcoming. He's talked with transgender individuals. He has, welcomed them, gotten to know them, listened to their stories, and yet here he is coming out saying this isn't okay. The first line under sex change says, the dignity of the body cannot be considered inferior to that of the person as such. Your body in and of itself has the same level of dignity as your spirit, as your soul. And so he's saying, as a human, I owe my body the same level of dignity and respect that somebody else would owe me, or that I would owe them as a whole person. And once we start changing that, once we start modifying that due to an experience that we're having, we are then dissociating our bodies with our spirits. And some would say you're affirming. This is not black and white, right? The cast review even says it. For some people, there is going to be, after thorough evaluation, after time has passed, after we've slowed down and not put all of these kids on puberty blockers, which do have negative effects in bone density and adult sexual function and all of these different things, it makes me angry that people try arguing that there are no negative side effects. It's all reversible, because it's just not true. It's BS. And I'm tired of the lies. I'm tired of this misinformation, like genuine misinformation, just because it's rooted in ideology. Oh, well, evidence shows this. No, evidence doesn't. There are all kinds of things that contribute to somebody feeling suicidal. It is not solely their gender identity, okay? It is a whole person. It's not just rooted in this one facet of their life. And so when you start talking about the dignity and respect that every human being is deserved, it doesn't discriminate. There's no level of berating. There's no level of mockery. There's no level of anything that is at all acceptable toward any individual who would identify in any capacity contrary to their born sex. I appreciated that this document did say that if somebody is born with a genitalia abnormality, that a medical procedure would not constitute a sex change in the sense intended here, because it's not going opposite. Intersex individuals are real. It's very different than somebody who is a born female trying to transition to a man, which, as I talked about in my last episode, often has to do with some form of sexual abuse, some sort of very significant sexual abuse where the dissociation is highly sought after because we don't want our body anymore. If somebody else treated us that way, we just want to hide, you know. I hate to use her name, but we look at like Amanda Bynes. It has been very prominent in the media how, you know, the side-by-sides of her then and her now. And then when we learn about everything that happened to her, how just devastating. Like, basically the claim that she was raped, that she had to get an abortion when she was 15, all of these things, and then wanting that like dissociation of like, well, I don't want somebody to want me like that, so I'm going to change everything about me. I'm going to make myself less desirable so that it doesn't happen again, right? I think that so much of it is just rooted in suffering, and all the church wants to do, all that Christ wants to do for anybody is to lessen that suffering, is to say, what can we do? I'm sorry. What can we do to lessen that suffering? And I think for me, it affects me just so much because I have young children. These are the peers that they're going to be growing up with. And that's hard for me to see a lot of the confusion. And it's hard for me to imagine a child the age of my children with parents that are saying, oh, you're confused about something, and so they take them off to put them on medications. I mean, I have a hard enough time with ADHD medication for school because I just think that children should not be on long-term medication unless like absolutely fundamentally necessary. But the diagnostic criteria of ADHD is basically if you can't sit at a desk for 8 hours, then you have ADHD. No, that child probably needs to be homeschooled. That child has too much energy. They want to be outside running around, learning about nature, learning about deciduous and conifer trees, learning about the things that are around them, how to forage, how to identify plants. Like, get them outside, get them engaged, get them utilizing their brains in different ways, stimulating their senses so that they're not just sitting at a desk. Like, there's so much that children need. And instead, it's going down this route of lifelong medication and just stifling their creative processes and allowing them to learn and grow and learn about the finite realities that are around them. And that's upsetting to me. But also it's I just think about the amount of bullying that I have received over the last 3 years, a lot of which I don't talk about, which is fine. I don't feel the need to publicly discourse about a lot of it, but it has been intense. It has been a lot. It has been relentless. The number of people who have an Allie Marie Here playlist on TikTok is beyond me. As it is, I'm no longer engaging on that platform because I do think that, you know, and as the cast review says, it has a lot to do with social media. These confusions, everything that's going on. Children under the age of 18 are looking more to online influencers and lived experiences for their information than actual peer-reviewed, evidence-based articles. And that's the problem. That's why I assume people got so mad at me, because my lived experience about living the way of the world and then coming to Christ, I am a completely different person and I love who I am. And I am so at peace and full of love and joy and happiness. I mean, my sign name is Allie. It's the sign for happy with an A. And that's what I was named by a friend of mine who was in the deaf community because I'm just happy. And it's because of the Lord. The Lord is my joy. The Lord is my strength. And for people who don't want people to find God, the people that have been so harmed and hurt by religion, they don't want anyone else to join that. They don't want them to see that lived experience where God is the source and summit of somebody's love and joy and peace, that it is a reality that occurs. And so I'm not going to stop speaking about that. I'm going to talk more about it on this channel and on Facebook and Instagram and the places where, the way TikTok is set up, it's set up for cyberbullying. The way that the algorithm works, the way that stitches and duets and hashtags and search features, it's just so easy for people to bully and then make it possible to really just get that mob mentality going, because that's what it is. Everyone's feeding off each other for trends and this and that. And then anyone who it's not healthy and it's not reality. And that's one of the things that my husband and I talked quite a bit this weekend about, was the chronically online. I think I have been fairly chronically online for the last while, and it's very hard to differentiate reality from the screen. You think that everything that's happening on social media, you think that everything that's happening on the screen is the same as reality, but it's not. And that's why some people say, go touch grass. Because you're not rooting yourself in reality. You're rooting yourself in an online forum that is not true. People do not act that way in real life, period. You just don't. You encounter a gay couple, you encounter a transgendered individual, and you're just going about life. It's no big thing. There's no big spectacle. It's just a person and people, and you see them and they're a part of the community, and great. Hello. Hi. And it's not as big of a thing as so many people make it out to be. I don't know why I'm so upset and why why my heart feels so heavy about this, other than just that deep-seated truth that the whole goal of Catholicism, of Christ, is to prevent profound suffering. It's all about an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And that is 100% what Christ can give you. He will keep you safe. He won't let you get in the car with a 16-year-old who wants to drive across the country. And it's for your good, whether you can see it or not. Because as a 16-year-old, I can guarantee that I would have been mad at my mom and said, no, let me go. It's fine. And, maybe they will be fine. Maybe they go on the trip and they come back, they had a great time, everything was good, no problems. But you never know what could have been. The risk simply was not worth the reward, and it was up to the parent to discern that for the child. And that is what it is now in every situation with any type of medication that we're giving our children, any type of anything. We have to make decisions for our children. And if they're not rooted in medical-based evidence or rooted in the Word of God, and that we're not double checking that those things are aligning with each other, that's where the foundation of our household is. We look at the medical side, we look at the holistic side, so we're looking at the whole person, and we're also looking biblically and spiritually for how this development is occurring and what it is that we need to do to assist our children in becoming the best versions of themselves. How can we help them in this journey in the 21st century to become emboldened children of God, and allow themselves to grow into themselves with the least amount of resistance within themselves? And how can we just grow together as a family? How can we grow together to get to know each other and learn each other's quirks and differences and preferences and everything across the board? Because it's going to be different for every person. It's going to be different for every household. Every single person is an individual. The cast review even said it's very harmful and is unhelpful to lump people together as generalizations, because everyone is an individual, and that is whether you are part of a minority group or not. Like, everybody is simply an individual. And I just think that in our day and age, there is so much focused on the victim mentality, trying to, like I'm a survivor, and putting ourselves in this identity place of, of being a victim. I think I see it a lot now, and I don't know how healthy that is. And I think that once we surrender our lives to Christ, I don't think that that victim mentality continues, because we've already had our Savior. We're already saved. We're saved from any victimizing that can occur. And so I think that, it doesn't mean that you can't be upset. It doesn't mean that you can't be hurt, but you can be upset and hurt and traumatized and abused and all these things without identifying as a victim, right? You have people who identify as victims and people who identify as survivors. And I've been thinking about that a lot lately, because I heard somebody, I think it was, is it Amy Smart, Elizabeth Smart, the girl who was kidnapped and held hostage for the 9 months. She married the guy. I just saw it on TikTok. But she said in one of her speeches, she said that she was speaking to the victims and the survivors. So she was addressing people who identified as both. And I think that in Christ, we definitely become survivors, because Christ himself was a survivor of death, right? He came back to life. And I just think that that is a huge testament for how he can work in your life, how he has worked in my life, how he can continue to work through every devastation that occurs on this earth. I just saw last night that Iran is launching an air attack on Israel. I just think that there's so much hurt in this world, and there really needs to be a way to stop any hurt that we can at all prevent. And it's such a conversation. I mean, you can go on and sit down with a cup of coffee and talk about it for days. There are so many ways that hurt can be prevented, and even within that, it's going to be individualized. It's going to be person to person. And that's why in the CAS review, it is strongly recommended to expand their services, that the NHS is completely inundated and there are wait lists, and they need to, expand this and learn how to refer out to psychologists, and that it's not just this answer of, oh yeah, sure, just go on puberty blockers and, we'll get you in another 6 months so we can talk about it then. But that maybe psychology, seeing a psychologist and talking about some of this stuff is the first step, and that can be referred out from the wait list, and all of the different pieces on what preventative care truly looks like, how to be proactive and offer that prevention. I just hope that everybody knows that you are worthy of dignity and respect, period. It doesn't matter. That's what Pope Francis has preached. What I believe. And with that too, like, disagreement does not equate to hate. We can love you. We can, it's from the adulterer to the murderer to the, transgendered individual to the one in a gay marriage to whoever. Like, there can be genuine, deep love for you and your absolute highest level of well-being. And we can disagree and say, after discussion, who knows what that discussion looks like, but there can still be an end of the road, finite, tangible awareness that we disagree in the way that the life is being lived out. A lot of times recently I've been told, mind your own business. People are trying, there's the acronym going now, MYOB, mind your own business. And that's just not the Christian way. It's not the way to do, because we're a community. You can't just say mind your own business. I'm at the store, you make a spill and you're going off and doing something else, asking somebody else to pick it up. It's like, oh, we'll just pick it up, or it's a community, whatever. But like, also your child made the mess and maybe have them help, or whatever. It's like, we need solid communities. We need, like, my kids are going to be growing up with your kids, and teaching that ability to disagree, teaching that ability to maintain relationship while still disagreeing or not completely agreeing on everything, as long as they're not being, physically harmful or obtusely mean, different things like that. Like, learning how to take things with a grain of salt, learning how to not internalize things, not to find our sense of worth in other people. I just think so much of that is so important to be teaching our kids. And I just hope that my children are able to grow up and cultivate awesome friendships with people and find that place that they feel like they belong, but also where they can help others feel like they belong, even if their entirety of fundamental philosophical and theological beliefs aren't completely in agreement. You see, even in the Catholic Church, you have the Roman Rite and the Byzantine Rite, but they're both in full union with Rome. So you have even just that piece where you look at the East and the West, and I don't know. This has been a very emotional morning for me. Obviously, I've really struggled. When this whole thing started, I just literally closed my eyes and prayed. I'm like, Lord, I don't know how you want me to talk. I don't know what I'm supposed to do right now. I'm like, this is how I feel. Am I supposed to record later? But no, right now is the time that I have to record. This is the blocked time. What do you want me to say? And, biblically, he says, don't prepare what you're going to say. Trust that the Holy Spirit will guide your tongue. And so that is what I do a lot of the times on this channel. I do not pre-prepare talks. I don't write things out. I've never read from a script, with the exception of one single video where I tell you I'm reading a blog post. But I will do research. I will look for, catechism references in the past. I do look up quotes from early church fathers. Obviously, I read things, but I don't sit down and write out what I'm going to say. I don't make an outline. I don't do those things because I don't feel that that's the way that God has called me to share my heart. I've always wanted to remain authentic. It's hard for me because right now I really want to dive into analytics. I really want to learn how to engage audiences better. And, the majority of people probably dropped off by now. I don't know. But I can't, because I feel like it loses who I am. And I feel like so much of what I've poured into this channel, so much of what I've shared online, I've always maintained a commitment to integrity, that I've always wanted to remain authentic. I've wanted to remain myself. I didn't want this to be like a business. I never wanted to, I didn't start my channel with some goal of making brand deals and promotions and to be some, kind of whatever. I just wanted to reach people with the truth of Christ. I just wanted to reach people with the truth of the Catholic Church. I just wanted to talk to people one person at a time. That was all I've ever wanted and still want. And so I have this internal struggle now where it's like, well, this could be a really great avenue for income. It could be this, it could be that. And yet I just find myself crying, speaking from my heart, sharing my thoughts in a very vulnerable and real way. And it's just like, okay, God, if that's what you want, then fine, use it for your glory, because all I want to do is glorify him. All I want to do is honor the Spirit that he has sent to dwell within us, and make it be known that he can work in your life too. He, even though I haven't been joyful and happy and smiling and laughing in this video, I do a lot of the time, I promise. If this is your first episode of mine, I'm sorry. Come back another day. But I'm just very passionate about this. It's a surprising level of passion that I feel for the truth about the male and female dichotomy. It's fundamental to our existence. Even in plants, you have male and female flowers on the zucchini plants. Your first flowers that come up are male, then you get the female flowers. And you can even tell the difference between them because the female flowers have the little fruit between the flower and the plant. It's not just a thin, skinny stem. You can tell which one are female flowers because you can see the fruit starting to develop. And the male plants, the male flowers, will never produce fruit. They are simply just a stem. And so learning that, even, it's everywhere. The male and female connection is so imperative. They're distinctly different yet equal. And to try to do the sex differences and try to make them interchangeable, it's not upholding the dignity of the body. It's not upholding the integrity of what it is that your body ultimately exists for. And it's just so important to help prevent future suffering. That's all that we care about. That's all that I care about, is just making sure that somebody's getting the right, proper care that they deserve. And that's all that the CAS report was about too, that every single trans-identified individual deserves the highest level of care, and that does not always look like puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones and sex changes. That's all she offered in that. And I think that it is a very balanced approach. I think it makes a ton of sense. And I think it's the exact reason that commenter thought that I had already read the CAS report when I had never heard of it when I recorded my last video, because that's exactly what I said, that there is not just one way to treat transgenderism. There are multiple ways. It's a multiple disciplinary approach. And so for me to say that out of just a way that just makes sense, that is just fundamental truth, as I said, I don't need a case study for that. I don't need a report or a review. I don't need the CAS review to tell me that, because I already know that. As should you. It just makes sense that a black and white approach to treating any type of abnormality, or we talked about the word disorder, something that's out of the order, out of the norm, something that we're seeing a doctor for. There is no black and white approach to anything, because you have to look at the whole person, you have to look at the whole body, you have to look at everything that has been going on, and people are multifaceted. So to try to make a black and white treatment plan and lump everybody in the same group is going to be a disadvantage for all. God bless you. I think that's all I have in me for today. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. You can look up the Dignitas Infinita and the CAS review online. Just look for the PDFs. They're there for you. And I pray that the Lord just makes known to you what it is that you need known. And I pray that He grants you those resources that you need to draw closer to Him, and in turn to those around you. I hope you have a blessed Sunday, and I look forward to chatting with you again soon. Take care.